have with us Dr. Jaijit Bhattacharya, who's a very famous face now on television as well as social media, and a prolific writer and thinker with a background of two IITs and one IIM, and having served with the big four like KPMG, and now the founder of a startup. Very busy man, Jaijit. Good to have you. Yajit, tell me the macro picture as it stands today. Supposing I'm a medium-sized business person with a small, medium kind of enterprise, is the world looking scary to me, or is it looking better than scary?
I don't think a businessman can succeed if they are scared. I don't think that word should exist in their dictionary. The day they decided to be an entrepreneur, I don't think they should have kept the word scared in their dictionary at all. But we have clearly entered into a phase where for a long time we used to keep saying that change is the only constant and there will be accelerated change. Here is as much of change as you can handle. The only thing that will keep happening this year is change, which includes the kind of business you are in. If you have not pivoted right now, it's high time that you have pivoted. And there will be a plethora of opportunities. We have, as a country, as an example, we have gone from producing almost zero PPEs to being one of the largest manufacturers of PPEs in the world in a period of 2 months flat. So clearly, there is a large number of opportunities opening up. The requirements of the society is changing. We have fast forwarded in terms of if I had written a science fiction book, if I had said that in 2030 this is going to happen, well, that's happening in 2020. And we all know why. So I don't need to go into that oft-discussed issue that we have fast-forwarded in terms of digital adoption. But what that means from a government, from a business perspective, is that has opened up a large number of opportunities in various fields. Just look at the software that you and I are using. Did that exist before? Was it popular? And we have democratized the whole business of having sessions being transmitted to a large number of people. Did we have this earlier? Was this a popular mechanism of interacting? It has all come up in the last 2 to 3 months, and that's the pace of change we are talking about. We were boasting that, look, fixed telephony took 20 years to penetrate so much, and mobile telephony took 5 years to penetrate as much. Well, look at this technology. It has taken 2 months to penetrate, right? And that's happening in every sphere of business. There are changes happening. It'll be up to the business leaders to lead that change or be dragged along or be made irrelevant. So it's a very exciting phase that we've got in Vivek.
Absolutely, Jajit. Well said. I totally agree. Jajit, now a little bit about the opportunities in the digital economy, because you're an expert there, Jajit. And what is it looking forward to? What should a person seeking to capitalize on this digital boom? As you said, many of these softwares which we are using now did not exist. The digital world did not exist in the way it is now. And going forward, blended learning in schools, blended ways of working in businesses, even governance. So the digital economy, talk about that.
Sure, Vivek. There's a framework that I used to push for to understand how technology gets absorbed in the society. And about 2 decades ago, I put that framework in, and it still holds true, where you would look at it at a new technology model or a new technology that comes in around which you build up a new technology model. Now, to get that model absorbed, you create a new operational model. And then on top of it, you build a business model. And then you take care of the regulatory issues that it rips apart. And therefore, new regulatory models comes in. And then you look at the change management of inserting that entire technology into the society. And that's how typically technology would flow in, right? Nobody would really ask that I need an internet. I need a social media. These were terms that were created post facto. The situation was that I have a hammer. Let me figure out where are the nails as a solution, right? That situation has changed now. We are starting the other side of that entire framework, that there is a social change that has happened. Where is the regulatory support? Where is the business model? Where are the operation models? And where is the technology? Now, fortunately, some of the technologies that we have built up till date works, right? But there's a lot more technology that needs to be built up. There isn't enough that we have which can solve the problem. For example, if I really want to make a contactless payment, RBI has come out and said that, well, above rupees 2,000, you can actually enter the MPIN. So you can take the card, which is NFC enabled, which is contactless, you tap it, right? But post that, you have to enter your MPIN. Now, how do you enter your MPIN? Obviously, with your fingers. The moment you touch that screen, you're compromised. You're biologically compromised. In addition, you're also digitally compromised because your MPIN is being now visible to the merchant. So we have not really solved the problem of contactless payment, even though we have the latest of technologies all around us. So there are a whole bunch of technologies which still needs to be invented, given the new social norm that has come out, which is the underlined word contactless, right? And it goes back to how India used to behave in the good old days. I'll not digress, but the point is everything was contactless in the good old days. You do a namaste and starting with that, you maintain the highest hygiene. But in the digital age, that hygiene has got compromised because you have to use common screens. You have to go to a kiosk in an airport and start tapping things in, and many such issues. And coming back to your question, which is therefore, what are the digital opportunities? Well, the point number one digital opportunity is that let's see how much of the existing technologies we can repurpose for the new normal that we have in terms of the social requirements we have. Second, identify where are there technology gaps so that we can go ahead and start creating those technologies. And third, where can we have a hybrid where we have a technology, but it's still not good enough, and therefore we add another piece of technology to it and start offering that. Now, where are the opportunities? The opportunities in every single sector, just like I mentioned right in the beginning of the call. If you're doing work from home, which is what's the first thing that has hit people, how do I ensure that the security of data is there? And even if I ensure that the security of data is there while you're operating from home, how do I redo my contracts? That's a huge opportunity. Because much of the contracts say that your data should not be leaving the office, and that's how me as your client is giving data to your organization. And therefore, how do we reconcile the technology of ensuring that people work from home and the data is flowing from your office into home while it's aligned to the contract? Something has to change, right? That's a huge opportunity. How do I, for example, go into a little more deep and I say, well, there is an HR issue. People will come back and say, look, I'm using more of my air conditioning at home. I'm using a separate space for which I need to pay rent. I am paying for my broadband, which I did not use to earlier. And I have to probably have, an extra broadband to bring in redundancy. How do I compensate for all of that? Somebody has to now rework this entire compensation package. Now, if I wear the organization's hat, I'll also argue that, look, you don't need to commute to the office anymore, so you're saving that much of money. So as Professor Negroponte had once famously said, that there is a race between telecommunication and transportation. And guess what? As of now, telecommunication seems to be winning. So you and I are having a conversation over telecom, and we don't need to transport ourselves and meet physically. These are all opportunities. Solving the HR issue, solving the place issue, solving the payments issue, the contracts issue, the psychological issue that comes up because of a different kind of work environment, the psychological issue that comes up because of a new home environment, right? It's not just really work all the time. Because I'm constrained in my home, there is a different issue that's coming up for adults, there's a different issue that's coming up for the children. Children who are not able to play, what technology do I provide to them so that they can start doing some physical exercise and play while not feeling like they're going into a gym? So Vivek, in summary, essentially any place that you look at and any place you put your finger in, there is a plethora of opportunity that we need to go ahead and solve. And I would rather call it a challenge and a problem that we need to solve, and it's our responsibility as technocrats and as business people to actually go ahead and solve this problem.
Very well said, Jaijit. Absolutely agreed. And this fear about the virus and contactless and things. I don't know whether 1 year later we'll be talking about it even. But the point is, there is an opportunity today, and I wrote a piece called "The Hugs of Hindustan," which was basically a year ago when people were all hugging each other at parties, and I noticed we never used to do that. Suddenly people were hugging each other. Now they've all unhugged each other because it is not possible. I want to know the opportunities in the AI sector, specifically machine learning, data analytics, technology, high technology, even related to governance. Maybe government too needs to, and government, as you know, is the biggest market for various things at least. So how can we leverage on this as a community, as a nation?
So, Vivek, one thing I can assure you is that AI will not be able to solve the problem that Neeraj started out by saying, which is ease of doing business. That's something that the government has to roll up its sleeves and do, as very well articulated.
That point is taken.
So we need to employ natural intelligence in that space. But having said that, in fact, just this morning I was having a deep conversation on providing benefits at a large scale, which is being done by one of the startups based out of Delhi. And they're already helping out the states of Bihar and Odisha and so on. And the point was that you can have a rule-based engine which says that, well, if your income is below so much, you are eligible to this kind of a benefit. And if you do not have a housing, then you are eligible for this kind of a benefit. But if you have an AI engine on top of it, I can start detecting that the person to whom I'm giving, let's say, a gas cylinder as a subsidy is also then applying for a gun license. Now, what's the issue? Well, a gun license is okay, but the gun itself costs about 100,000 rupees. So how can they afford a gun and then take a subsidy on gas cylinders?
Yeah.
And that's where we need to get into AI to start plugging in the holes that happens in the government's economy. And the government business is 20% of the total economy in any country. That's a huge part of the business we're talking about. Taking AI to an industry or industrial perspective, obviously there are benefits to AI in all range. You know, even if you go into manufacturing, when you put up one biscuit and then a layer of cream and the second biscuit comes in between the spider comes in and you're manufacturing millions of biscuits. One biscuit, the spider decides to get in and get cozy, you have destroyed your entire brand. So where does AI come in? People have put in, and these are Indian innovations, they put in a camera which continuously checks the image of the biscuit, the cream, and the next biscuit coming in without any spider or insect walking in. From there to the government side of doing benefit analysis, to the robotic process automation, wherein if you are doing processing of purchase orders, can there be an automation where AI steps in and starts figuring out how to do the purchase order to payment process, or even the sales order to receipt process, and so on and so forth, or even taking care of customer issues. Now, in the age of massive scalability, where everything is upscale, Facebook has got a couple of billion users, Jio has got 400 million users, Airtel has got 300 million users. Now, in that scale, if the customers wants to get back to you and want to get a personalized response from you, how will you do it? You cannot treat every one of them in a personalized manner, but that's what they're expecting. That's where AI again comes in the form of either chat or in form of voice-based AI, and so on and so forth. Now, having said that, as a country, India really needs AI in the space of social infrastructure. If today I need to scale up my education and make sure that every person in this country is a graduate, and that's how I'm really going to use the demographic advantage that we're fast losing. We saw the shift in the age group that we had, and the statistics and census came out a month ago. We're losing the demographic advantage. So if we need to scale up and provide education to the 200 million children out there that are there in the schools and make sure that they cross college, there is no other way to do it but deploy AI. And have AI-based teachers really teaching them, and have different students getting into different areas, somebody trying to do nuclear physics, and an AI-based teacher actually teaching them how to learn about nuclear physics, while somebody else wants to do literature of Kalidasa, and a teacher will be there to help them out. In the real physical world, we cannot manufacture teachers at that rate. The only way we can do it is using AI. The same issue comes in terms of medicine. We can have telemedicine, but at the end of the telemedicine, what do we have? We still have a doctor. And if you need to scale up telemedicine, you really can't scale up doctors. You cannot manufacture doctors in a factory. So what do? You need to have AI on the other end, and you need to have regulatory changes to allow that AI to actually give you a prescription. So the medical legal regulations have to change in order to have this large-scale adoption. And the 80-20 rule always applies, that 80% of the cases can easily be taken care of by this AI. And as the future moves forward, the AI will be far better than any single individual doctor, because it will be capturing knowledge from a large number of doctors in a manner where It starts gaining knowledge based on the prescriptions provided, and it goes back into a neural network, which then starts learning more and more. So from an Indian perspective, I think it's imperative that we scale up in terms of deploying AI. But there is another angle to AI, which is providing the AI solution itself. Now, as you kind of got the hint that AI has to be first taught. It has to be taught by a doctor. It has to be taught by somebody. Somebody has to tell the image processor and AI that, look, this is a computer, this is a keyboard, this is a webcam. And that's how the system then starts learning that here is a webcam. You take pictures of the webcam from 20 different directions, and somebody has to keep training the AI that each one of these 20 pictures is actually the same webcam. And slowly, the system starts learning. Now, there's a huge job out there to actually start doing these annotations of telling that this picture is a webcam, this picture is a monitor, or this word means whatever it means, and doing speech annotation. And that's something that India is already out there in, because we were kind of the leaders in outsourced teleworking. We were the leaders in IT. So can we now get our school-educated kids to start doing annotations? Can we go to the villages and start telling them, this is how you annotate the various pictures? Because they can look at the picture and figure out whether it's a keyboard or whatever else it is, and they can actually do it in Gujarati. They can do the annotation in Gujarati or in Santali or anything. And the translation can then kick in. So the technology will start helping us to make even the least educated of our population to start doing the most advanced piece of work in terms of AI. And that's the plethora of interventions that we can do in AI, both in terms of leveraging it for increasing efficiency, as well as for increasing jobs in this country.
Wonderfully well said. Very good insights, Jaijit, and I totally agree with you. Having been director IT for many years, trying to get in government into IT and things, but there are so many more aspects to what you said, which are very important for everyone to understand. This globalization, which we've been talking about for so many years, and then seamless transition, and Tom Friedman wrote "The World is Flat," and I mean, everything seemed to be going hunky-dory, and suddenly we have this parochial kind of thinking all over the world, and everybody's like, mera ye, mera ye, mera ye. Why is this happening, Jaijit? And what can be done? While technology is taking us, in this, with the twitch of your finger, you can be anywhere in America or Finland. But parochialization, how do we stop that, or how do we benefit?
So, I think we should first trust people. Even as a democratic country, I think if people are going towards a certain direction, there must be some logic to it. And let me start from the example that Neeraj took right in the beginning, that why are we importing non-essential stuff? The mouse pad that I am using right now came in this morning, and it came all the way from China. I never realized I'm ordering a Chinese product. Imagine the greenhouse gases that have been emitted because of this transportation all the way from China to here. And why can't somebody in Gurgaon, I live in Delhi, so why can't somebody in Gurgaon or around in Haryana actually manufacture and give it to me? It's just a piece of almost a thicker napkin that I have, but it came all the way from China. Now, what I'm basically driving at, Vivek, is that you will see there were concepts such as intellectual property rights, which started coming in only in 1960s. And I will not even go into what happened during the 1800s in terms of patents to be put on, let's say, the steam engine and decimerization. Those were the two pillars of globalization, and both actually grew once the IPR was taken up. Decimerization was an open process. Steam engine was almost killed when James Watt tried to put a patent on it and extend it for 30 years because of his influence on the parliament. But steam engine was actually not invented by him. And it actually grew in terms of efficiency once the entire growth and the technology was put into a journal called the Lean Engine Report. And that's how steam engine grew. And what I'm driving at is that why was suddenly IP made a very big issue in 1960s? Because in 1960s was when the last of the colonies stopped being a colony. So how do you maintain a disproportionate economic benefit going to certain economies based on their control, either direct through political interference or through any other mechanism where there is a disproportionate benefit coming out of these economies into these other economies. So Vivek, help me understand, why does a barber in India do 20 heads in a day and then goes in a slum and lives, whereas a barber in US does the same 20 heads, goes into his car, drives home to his apartment, and lives a much nicer lifestyle? What is the crime that our barber has done? The crime that our barber has done is that he has decided to live in an economy where the trade structures are against that economy, right? And that is the expression of those unbalanced trade structures, is where the standard of living is extremely different in these two countries, or these two kinds of countries. Now, the example that Neeraj was talking about the prowess that India has. What is it that India cannot develop? Right? What application can we not develop? What technology that we cannot develop, which is used in day-to-day life? I'm not talking about the fifth generation fighter aircraft. Yes, that takes a lot of investments and so on. But largely 90% of the technologies are pretty much off the shelf. Now, if you're a smart kid out of, let's say, one of the IITs in Ropar, because you're from Haryana, and you have created a very nice prefetch queue in a microprocessor, which is better than anything out there. Well, what happens to your technology? Nothing, because your technology cannot go into the microprocessor, which is controlled by others. So the entire economy or the ecosystem of the technology is controlled by somebody else, who decides what is technology and what is not technology, who then says where I'll sell that technology and not sell that technology to, who then decides that whatever you are selling from India is of lower price and lower cost and is quote unquote commodity. Whatever we are selling from somewhere else has got a margin of $800 on a $1,000 sale. And you look at the phones, and some of the flagship phones are, the manufacturing cost is $100 to $200, and they're sold at $1,000. Now, what am I really driving at? And your question was that about globalization and why have we become suddenly so myopic? So just bringing it back to the question that you asked is because we really went the other way around, where globalization was used as a tool to continue to have the disproportionate economic benefit going to somewhere else. Otherwise, why would we have such irrational activities, such as getting a mouse pad all the way from China, or getting a large number of things from other countries, which could easily be procured locally? I remember in 2002 having this conversation with a very senior and very, very educated bureaucrat in the central government, where my little point was that why are we not going and building the telecom equipment? And this was in the back of a very successful experimentation, or not even experimentation, demonstration done by CDOT at Mehrauli in Delhi, where they actually ran the 2G very, very well. And this was at a time when Huawei was in its diapers. Huawei was not even there. They did not even know what telecom was. And the reply that came in, which basically reflected what was being taught by the World Banks and by other such institutions. Not that I have anything against any of the institutions, because they all really believed that what they were saying was true. And their point was that, hey, don't worry about the technology per se, just import, because telecom itself will have a huge multiplier effect. Well, yes, I agree. Telecom will have a huge multiplier effect, but the telecom equipment will also have a large multiplier effect. Why do I want to leave that aside? And that then stops me from having control over my technology, which is the second concept of technological sovereignty that I kept talking about the last decade and a half. And that is what is coming back to bite us. It is a people who's saying, I really don't want to get stuff from outside because I'm starting to lose jobs. Now you go back into the late 18th century, the 1760s, 1780s, where we were dominating exports. In fact, the opening statement of Neeraj was, why doesn't India have an export-led economy? Absolutely right. We became the largest economy in the world by dominating certain areas. We dominated textiles. We dominated many other areas. And what did the British do to break that domination? Is there was a tax put on export of textiles, and cheap, inferior quality textiles was brought in tax-free. Now, how does it ever make sense? It makes sense from a British perspective, because you can then start getting undue economic benefit. You are stuffing in products, taking the wealth out, and over a period of time, you're actually turning the country into a poor country, which is what happened. 200,000 viewers died of starvation because they did not have their income anymore. That is what was getting reflected in the new age. And that is why we are seeing a swing of the pendulum from one side to the other extreme, where we are saying we'll not import anything and make everything domestically. I think we will very quickly reach a middle level where we need to import what we need to import, and we need to manufacture locally what we need to manufacture, because it is our responsibility to provide jobs at the bottom of the pyramid, because that is what the demand is. In fact, I can't sell that 5 rupee chip packet unless the guy has a job and is earning to be able to pay for that 5 rupee chip. If I import everything from China, then I can't sell the 5 rupee chip packet in India. So I also lose out, as possibly those who are looking at capital deployment, and as a startup that I run, I need to make sure that there is a large economy in India, which can only happen if I source everything from India, or as much as I can from India. So Vivek, in summary, essentially we are seeing the correction of a attitude that was driven by trade agreements and trade pacts, which were not really in the favor of economies which were resource challenged, such as the Indian economy as it was earlier.
Extremely well said, Jaijit. You've summed it up so well and given the context, and I totally agree.